So today we're tackling something pretty foundational, I think. It's about these universal patterns, archetypes, and also our own choices.
Yeah, how they influence our lives, our spiritual path, everything, really.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, right? How much of your life is actually yours, truly your own making, and how much is being shaped by these powerful, maybe unseen forces, the stuff we've dug into for this deep dive. It paints this picture of our lives being quite, choreographed is the word used.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this.
So where do we start with this choreography?
What's fascinating here is thinking about archetypes not just as like old stories or concepts.
Yeah, not just academic ideas.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
They're presented as these universal, impersonal, symbolic patterns of power. And they're constantly running through the fabric of our lives.
Like an undercurrent.
These patterns are always in play. Always.
Okay, so if these patterns are always running, there must be some core ones, right? And one that kept coming up is the hero's journey. The sources suggest that every single one of us is on this journey.
Consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, and it's not just one big adventure. It's described as one hero's journey after another your whole life.
Exactly. It's a continuous cycle.
And the benefit. Why should we care about this model?
Well, seeing it this way makes it super relevant. It's a really supportive framework for living more fully.
How so?
It helps align you with your, let's say, higher purpose, what the sources call your soul's high adventure.
So how does this journey actually work? What are the stages?
Okay, so it basically breaks down into 3 main acts. Think of it like a play.
Act 1.
Act 1 is departure. This often starts with what's called the death of normal, or the end of ordinary, like a big loss or losing your job, something major. But interestingly, it doesn't have to be.
Oh.
No, it could be something that seems much smaller, but is actually really profound. Like deciding, okay, I'm changing my diet.
Right.
Or consciously stopping yourself from using negative language.
Yeah.
Or even, that simple choice to stop saying, I don't know, all the time, and actually engage.
Wow. Okay, so even those small shifts can be a departure, leaving the familiar.
Exactly. It's about leaving behind what's comfortable, what's known.
So that's the start, leaving normal. What's Act 2?
Act 2 is initiation. This is where you metaphorically cross the threshold. You step into the cave of the innermost self.
Or the dragon's den. Sounds intense.
It is. This is where you face your fears, your blocks, your personal demons, so to speak. And the sources are really clear here. This part isn't, a cruise or Disneyland.
Right, not a vacation.
Definitely not. It involves real challenges, darkness, even the possibility of, failing, of defeat.
That sounds daunting. Why go through it?
Because the core insight, and this is really powerful, is through going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life.
Oh, okay. The lessons are in the challenge.
That's it, exactly. This is where the deepest learning happens.
So you face the abyss, you find these treasures.
Right.
What's the final act? Act 3.
Act 3 is the return. So after you've claimed your treasure, that new wisdom, that strength, whatever it is,
right,
you're called to come back, to return with the boon.
The boon?
Yeah, the gift of your journey. And the purpose is to serve or teach or inspire other people who are on their own paths.
So it's not just for yourself?
Not at all. It becomes part of the collective. And what's really key here is seeing how often this plays out in everyday life. Applying to university, starting a new job, getting married or divorced, becoming a parent.
Okay, yeah, big life changes.
Forging really deep new friendships, starting a spiritual practice like meditation or prayer, healing from something chronic.
Right.
Even challenging those old family stories or patterns.
Yeah.
Committing to, say, writing a book or finishing an art project, achieving sobriety, all of these. They're hero's journeys.
Wow. Okay, that reframes a lot.
It does. And the point is, the person who starts that journey, they're fundamentally changed by it.
You're not the same person coming home.
Not at all. The insights, the resilience you gain, it becomes like a spiritual backpack you carry.
A spiritual backpack. I like that metaphor. It equips you for the next transition.
Exactly, for the next journey.
Okay, so life is this series of these journeys, these transformations, but what drives us through them? If the journey is the framework, what's the engine?
The sources really zero in on the power of individual choice.
Choice.
Yeah. It's argued that this is perhaps the most significant power humans possess.
More powerful than the archetypes.
Well, it's how we navigate the archetypal currents. Every single choice, big or small, is seen as an act of creation. It has the potential to change everything.
An act of creation. That's a strong statement.
It is. And within this whole framework, the point of life, the journey itself, is about developing yourself to the point where you can really listen to that inner guidance, your intuition, and let that direct your choices.
Instead of just reacting to outside pressures.
Exactly. Moving away from being controlled by outer guidance towards trusting the inner voice.
And how does that connect to, say, self-esteem? Does that play a role?
Oh, absolutely. It's deeply connected. The material stresses how critical self-esteem is for well-being, for health, mental health. The works.
Okay.
Because strong self-esteem empowers you. It gives you the confidence to make choices that actually reflect your intuitive self, your purpose.
And not just choices based on fear.
Precisely. Moving beyond those survival-based fears. Think about it. When you have an authentic yes to something, an opportunity, how does it feel?
Often quick, clear, like a gut feeling.
Right. Instantaneous almost, a clear impulse.
Yeah.
That's described as choosing at the speed of light.
Speed of light, okay.
But choices made out of fear or trying to fit in or obligation, they feel heavy, right? Slow. You overthink.
Definitely. Bogged down.
That's the tribal speed, the speed of survival choices.
Tribal speed versus speed of light. That's a really vivid distinction. I can almost feel that difference.
You can, right.
Yeah.
And this ties directly into living with integrity and accountability.
How so?
Well, choosing to live an integrous life, which means, aligning your thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Being congruent.
Exactly. That congruence builds inner self-esteem. And interestingly, the sources suggest it actually activates a different kind of energy field around you, a different vibrational field.
Expecting different outcomes.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
And we're held accountable not just for what we do, the actions people see, but for the motives, the intentions behind our choices. That's where the real accountability lies.
Wow. Okay. That's deep. Intention matters as much as action.
It seems so. And this leads to another really crucial distinction the material makes, fate versus destiny.
Oh, okay. I've heard those terms used interchangeably sometimes. How are they different here?
They're very distinct here. Fate is described as what tends to happen when your choices are mostly driven by the past.
Like past experiences.
Yeah. Or external pressures, fears, even imagined negative outcomes. What if this goes wrong? Choosing from that place often leads to repeating the same patterns over and over. Feeling stuck, trapped, maybe even imprisoned by your circumstances. That's fate.
Right, like being on a loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Destiny, on the other hand, that's activated differently. Destiny kicks in when you consciously choose the unknown, when you break free from the conventional path, maybe the safe path, and you trust your inner guidance, even if it's scary, even with the fear.
So it's about embracing uncertainty.
Yes. It means inviting in the new, fundamentally transforming your life's direction, and often making courageous choices.
Yeah.
Especially decisions made for the well-being of others, not just your own safety. Those can trigger a really powerful destiny.
Interesting. Not just self-interest.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be huge, even tiny choices, like deciding consciously to say, bless your day, instead of cursing it when things go wrong. That small shift can fundamentally change how you interact with the universe. It activates a different quality of creative light, they say.
So destiny isn't predetermined, it's actively chosen. A more aligned path we create through conscious choice.
That's the idea. You choose destiny over repeating fate.
Okay, so we have the big hero's journey framework and the engine of choice navigating fate or destiny. But you mentioned other archetypes too, beyond the hero.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole landscape of them.
Yeah.
Our sources indicate there's a vast array of these patterns that actively dictate how we express power.
How we channel our life force.
Exactly, and often unconsciously. But understanding them, that can really change our choices, our perceptions. It helps us see life as it maybe truly is.
So recognizing these patterns helps us understand why we do what we do.
Precisely. It gives you insight into the underlying dynamics. Should we look at some specific ones? Well, a key group often discussed together are the 4 survival archetypes.
Okay. Survival. Sounds primal.
They are, in a way. They are. The child, the victim, the prostitute, and the saboteur. These symbolize major life challenges, and they reveal how we, as individuals, choose to survive. They show our fears, our vulnerabilities.
But also strength.
Yes, potentially. The material calls them intimate companions of our intuition. They make us aware of our fears, but they can become allies if we engage with them consciously.
So the energy isn't inherently bad.
No. The energies themselves are described as neutral. It's all about how we engage with them. That defines their impact on us.
Got it. Okay, so let's break them down. The child.
So, the child archetype often shows up, especially in its shadow form, as the wounded child or the orphan aspect.
Meaning?
Meaning it reflects this deep-seated belief that you lacked the necessary nurturing early on to handle responsibility, to be independent.
Okay, like feeling fundamentally unequipped.
Right. And the really insidious part, the insight here, is how this archetype can still operate in your adult life.
Wow.
You can justify self-sabotage. It whispers, you're not ready for that responsibility, or you can't handle that success. It can even give you a sort of subconscious permission slip to feel depressed or sorry for yourself.
Wow. A permission slip for misery based on the past.
Kinda, yeah. Then there's the victim.
Okay. What's the core of that one?
The victim archetype involves believing, often unconsciously, that you're entitled to something, maybe a certain life or treatment from others,
Right.
and simultaneously feeling completely powerless to get it or change things.
Entitled yet powerless. That's a tough combo.
It is. And facing the loss of that sense of entitlement or realizing you're not actually powerless, that could be a real dark night of the soul.
A crisis point.
Definitely. And interestingly, in some spiritual traditions, like Buddhism, actively believing you're powerless is considered a kind of first world hell.
A self-created suffering.
Exactly. An internal suffering created by holding on to a false sense of helplessness.
That's a really sharp insight. Choosing powerlessness. Okay, who's next? The prostitute.
Yes, the prostitute. Now, this one is identified as a primary survival archetype, but these specific sources didn't elaborate on it quite as much. But its essence in this kind of context usually points to where we might compromise our integrity, where we sell ourselves short.
For what?
For security, maybe, or approval, or just perceived survival, acting in ways that aren't truly authentic just to get by or gain something.
Trading integrity for safety, basically. The shadow side of self-preservation.
That's a good way to put it. And the last of the four is the saboteur.
Ah, the inner critic.
Pretty much. It's that inner voice that tries to stop us, tries to prevent us from being our full selves, from stepping into our power.
Why would we do that to ourselves?
It alerts us to our fears, especially the fear of empowering ourselves, and sometimes maybe even the fear of empowering others or changing the status quo.
Is there any positive side to the saboteur?
Yes, there can be. If you become conscious of it, it acts as a warning sign, a crucial choice point.
A choice point.
Yeah. It forces you to ask, am I going to empower this moment, move forward despite the fear? Or am I going to let this old pattern win again?
So it flags an opportunity for conscious choice.
Exactly. But a really strong, dominant saboteur, that often points to a deeper negative self-image that probably needs some attention.
Okay, that makes sense. It's fascinating how these inner dynamics, these archetypes play out, but you said there were others beyond survival.
Oh, yes. Many others shape us. For example, the rebel.
The rebel, okay, what's their deal?
The rebel is all about testing boundaries, pushing limits, questioning rules.
Can be good, right? Challenging unjust systems.
Absolutely. It can be a powerful force for positive change. Think of figures like Martin Luther King Jr. or Gloria Steinem challenging restrictions that needed challenging.
Right.
But there's a shadow side too. If the rebellion is just driven by anger, without a constructive goal, without a vision for what comes next.
It can just be chaos, constant opposition.
Exactly, just tearing down without building up. The core drive for the rebel, though, is always rooted in a deep need for freedom.
Freedom, okay. What about the destroyer? Sounds ominous.
It can be, but it represents a natural cycle, destruction and construction, or, death and rebirth.
Like forests needing fire to regenerate.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It often shows up when we've been ignoring intuitive nudges for change, ignoring the need for self-improvement or letting go of something.
So if we don't make the change ourselves,
larger forces might intervene. Life might force a reconstruction. It tests your endurance, your dedication to build something new from the ashes.
So it's not always literal destruction.
No, not necessarily. It can actually be a positive force for survival, clearing away the old, the stagnant, to make room for the new.
That makes a lot of sense. Like life forcing your hand when you resist needed change.
Precisely. Then a very different energy, the curmudgeon.
Huh. The curmudgeon.
Yeah.
We all know one, maybe.
Maybe. This archetype uses tactics often unconsciously to just stop the flow, to disrupt harmonious energy by constantly correcting people, making them feel small or inadequate, finding fault. It's usually a pretty clear signal of their own lack of self-empowerment, and often a deep resentment of other people's power or happiness.
Oh, it's like a self-esteem alarm going off, projecting their lack onto others.
Exactly, a self-esteem alarm. The sources are quite direct about this one, saying the trait is unpleasant, annoying,
And the indictment.
basically, stop it, recognize it and stop it.
Fair enough. Okay, who else?
The hedonist. This archetype highlights that very common human struggle, balancing work and enjoyment, duty and pleasure.
The struggle is real.
It is. Many people face real blocks to just allowing themselves pleasure. Often it's due to, like, puritanical influences in our culture or upbringing. Duty first, suffering is noble, that kind of thing.
Right, feeling guilty about relaxing or having fun.
Exactly. So this archetype really emphasizes the need for balance, for self-kindness, moving beyond self-punishment and allowing genuine enjoyment and ease into your life.
We probably all need a bit more hedonist energy sometimes, in a balanced way.
In balance, yes. Then there's the hermit.
Okay, solitude.
Yes, but it represents the need for solitude, for reflection. It's not about being antisocial.
But it's intentional.
Very intentional. It's about consciously setting aside time for deep inner dialogue, to recharge your batteries, to make conscious choices about how you manage your energy, your power.
Why would someone seek that?
Often for spiritual reasons, or deep creative work, or just to process difficult experiences and gain clarity away from the noise of the world.
Makes sense. Need that quiet space.
We do. Next, the liberator, specifically self-liberation.
Liberating yourself from what?
It focuses on reshaping your relationship with external influences and honestly looking at what holds power over you.
Like what?
Limiting beliefs, ingrained patterns, fears. The source specifically mentions the fear of humiliation as a big one for many people.
Ah, yeah. That fear can be paralyzing.
It can. So the liberator archetype is about freeing yourself from those inner chains. The material states that the deepest desire within every person is, actually, to be liberated, to be truly free.
Deepest desire. Wow. Okay. Who's next?
The visionary. This is that amazing ability some people have to envision what others just can't see yet.
Seeing possibilities.
Exactly. Exploring virgin creative soil where anything feels possible. Visionaries aren't dragged down by past failures or illusions.
What drives them?
They're driven to initiate change by imagining radically different solutions. But to do that, they have to dismantle their own fears.
Like what?
Especially the fear of empowering others. And they need to use visionary vocabulary language that attracts new solutions, that paints a picture of the potential, often for the well-being of the whole group or system.
Inspiring stuff. Visionary vocabulary. Okay, getting near the end of the list.
Just a couple more key ones. The trickster. The trickster disrupts our neat, conventional thinking, challenges our desperate need for control.
When does the trickster show up?
Often when we think we've got everything figured out, when we're getting complacent. The trickster introduces chaos, maybe absurdity, to shake things up, expose blind spots, force new perspectives.
Can it be negative?
Oh yeah. The trickster can be sly, unpredictable, even malicious sometimes, acting out of sheer unconsciousness, as one source put it. It also highlights how, if we give up our personal responsibility, we become much more susceptible to being tricked by others or just by life's unexpected turns.
Don't abdicate responsibility or the trickster might get you.
Got it. Last one.
The last one we'll highlight is the addict. Okay. Addiction is a heavy topic.
It is, but the archetype represents a universal human struggle. It embodies the battle with cravings. Any cravings that can potentially control our thoughts, our reason, even our heart.
Not just substances, then.
No, not at all. It could be cravings for approval, for drama, for being right, for distraction, anything that pulls us away from wholeness.
So what's the task associated with this archetype?
It highlights the deep need for congruence, for alignment between your head and your heart. That's where wholeness comes from. Moving beyond those distracting patterns like making excuses, procrastinating, needing the last word.
Recognizing the craving, whatever it is.
Exactly. Everyone has cravings. The spiritual task here is to spot them, become aware of them, and consciously work towards that inner congruence, that wholeness.
Wow. Okay, that's an incredible landscape of archetypes. We've covered the hero's journey, choice, fate, destiny, survival archetypes, and all these others. So what does this all mean? For us, for the listener, day to day.
Right. The big picture.
Yeah. It sounds like the main goal of understanding all this is, well, first, just becoming conscious of these patterns playing out inside us and around us.
Absolutely. Awareness is the first step.
And then maybe shifting how we view things. Moving from taking everything so literally, so personally.
Yes. Towards understanding things symbolically, impersonally. Seeing the larger pattern at play.
What does that give you, that shift?
It allows for what the sources call detachment.
Detachment? Doesn't that sound a bit cold, uncaring?
Not in this context.
Yeah.
It's not about being uncaring or unaffected. It's about the capacity to step back, understand the dynamics of a situation, see the archetypes involved without getting completely swept away by the immediate emotion. It's a kind of wisdom.
Okay, wisdom, not coldness. I get that.
It also involves recognizing our multisensory nature.
Multisensory.
Yeah, realizing that just relying on our traditional five senses, it's often not enough anymore to navigate the complexities of modern life.
So we need to trust our intuition more.
Exactly. Trusting that inner intuitive system, our gut feelings, those subtle knowings.
And the outcome of all this, becoming aware, detaching wisely, trusting intuition.
The outcome is empowerment. By bringing these unconscious dynamics into the light of consciousness, you empower yourself to make more positive, more intentional choices.
And that leads to?
Well, potentially profound healing.
So we're not just puppets of the archetypes, we're co-creators with them.
Beautifully put. We are active agents within this grand design.
Yeah.
Now, this journey of expansion, of becoming more conscious, it can be costly.
How so? Costly?
It often requires letting go of old, comfortable beliefs, facing uncomfortable truths, doing the work. But the reward is a much broader, more compassionate view of reality, a bigger perspective.
A powerful framework indeed. Okay, so maybe a final thought to leave everyone with. If every choice you make is truly an act of creation, and if you accept you're on this continuous hero's journey, what small, maybe seemingly insignificant choice could you make today, consciously, to align more with your destiny, rather than just repeating an old fate?
That's a great question to ponder.
Something to mull over. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, see how they resonate in your own life.
And this raises an important question, too.
Yeah.
How might recognizing which archetypes feel particularly active in your life right now, how might that change the way you look at your current challenges?